So we're just about 24 hours removed from the news of the Mandalorian film being in production and Ahsoka Season 2 being in the works, and everyone is rightly very excited. There's been some back and forth over whether it should be a show or a movie, and specifically, one thing I agree on is that the title of the movie probably could be a bit peppier. The Mandalorian and Grogu doesn't quite roll off the tongue, so I think it would be good if we could have a bit of a snappier title for that movie. But another bit of information that's come out today that's really caught my attention in The Hollywood Reporter. They did an interview with David Benioff and Dan Weiss, who are the infamous producers known as D&D, who headed up the cultural phenomenon known as Game of Thrones. And we all know how that show kind of tailed off and how they've been lumped with the blame. And rightly so. I don't hold it against them personally. I certainly think it's affected my view of their talent as producers, and I wouldn't want them necessarily heading up any other projects that I feel passionately about. But I don't hold it against them in terms of the people who they are. Now, there's been an interview with them about all of their previous projects, and in this, you'll remember back to about 2016-17, back when Lucasfilm were just handing out trilogies like it was candy on Halloween. They were supposedly given a project that would be a trilogy of films to head up, and we know that that never happened. We know that they ended up having it taken away. In fact, a lot of people seem to speculate that the reason that Game of Thrones fell off so hard is because they wanted to rush the ending to start their Star Wars project. Now, they've kind of outright denied that in this interview here, and they've given some other interesting tidbits into, what actually happened, and specifically what their story was going to be about. And I think it kind of opens up a kind of insight into why Disney maybe dropped them. Because they say that in their movie, it was going to be based around the first Jedi, which was basically how the Jedi Order came to be, why it came to be, and oddly enough, they mentioned the first lightsaber. Now, this is kind of the first red flag for me, because if they're specifically pointing out the first lightsaber, that makes me feel like their story was going to revolve around that, rather than, the idea of the first Jedi came to be through a connection to the Force. I feel like in their script, maybe it was like, well, this guy found a kyber crystal, he built a laser sword, and now he's a Jedi. Which for me feels completely wrong. It feels like the first Jedi should be revolving around his connection to the Force, how he crafted, this culture and this philosophy around the light side of the Force, and that's how it all started. And so that possibly gives us an insight as to why their script was rejected, because again, as we know, Disney basically said, no thank you, we're going to give this to someone else. Now, they do mention in jest that they were annoyed at the time because Rian Johnson titled his film The Last Jedi, which they say completely destroyed the obvious title for what they were working on. Again, I think that was a bit of a joke because it does say that he said that dryly. Again, this is a print, this isn't video or audio, so we can't truly tell. But another interesting thing to me that seemingly says that Disney really didn't fancy their idea of a script is that they said that Lucasfilm ended up not wanting to do a First Jedi story. They had a very specific story idea in mind, and ultimately they decided they didn't want to do that, and they get it. Now, that would be fine on its own, but years later, we kind of know now that Disney and Lucasfilm are actually very open, and they are in fact moving forward with a film about the beginnings of the Jedi. It's got a working title of Dawn of the Jedi. So we know that either someone in Lucasfilm had a very big change of heart and decided to do a movie around the origins of the Jedi, or someone told him a lie. They wanted to do it, they just didn't want to do their version of it, which I get, I understand. I certainly feel like it's probably for the best. I'm not saying that what we're going to get from James Mangold is going to be any better, but I certainly feel like, all things considered, the version that D&D would have produced probably would have been, at the very least, controversial, given, again, what we've seen here. But there's definitely some insight here that there was some regrets from Lucasfilm in announcing that they were going to give them a project, then everything else happened. They read the first draft, or at least the premise for the story, and then people within probably thought, you know what, I think we need to sidestep this, get them off, and, you know, just push them onto other things or give them something else to do, which, you know, we know now that there's no association between D&D and Lucasfilm. So, yeah, realistically, I'd like to know from you, what do you think they would have done with the story? Do you think their story would have been any good? Are you happy that D&D are no longer heading up a trilogy? We know that Rian Johnson was given a trilogy as well, which is supposedly still in the works, but has been pushed forward because of other projects that he's done. I think in my mind, they've probably just held off on the Rian Johnson trilogy because of the slightly mixed reaction to The Last Jedi. They didn't want to kind of push things too soon. But I do think that Rian Johnson will still end up heading some kind of a Star Wars project going forward. They seem very adamant about that, but D&D completely out. So yeah, let me know, what would you have thought of the premise of their story? Do you think they would have handled it well? Are you glad that they're no longer associated? And do you think that Disney was just flat out lying to them? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching. If you haven't, please do subscribe. There are many more videos on the way, including this Rey theory film that I've got coming out, which I know I keep talking about, but then different bits of news keep coming out, interrupting my script writing and my plans to get this all sorted. So, yes, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you for the next video.